right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 8. And today we are talking about map sizes. Are games too big? Are they too small? Are they just right? So joining me today is everyone's favorite Twitter gaming supermodel, Feel the Gurn.
Hey.
America's most wholesome home slice, Matt.
Hello.
And the Swede that everybody be need, the goat Boki.
Me and Tony here.
Bah.
We're ready to have some goated opinions.
So I know we're going to have some varying opinions just because I know I've had individual discussions with you guys. So I know that we may have some differences of thought here. So let's start with you, Gurni, and kind of just do a round robin and share our own opinions and feed off of each other. And let's talk about what we think about map sizes and game sizes and game bloat and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, map sizes in general. I will say, for me personally, something I prefer, and I think Naughty Dog has grasped onto this. Arcane Studios has kind of grasped onto this. Is the wide level design, where it's like it's not one giant ass open world. It's more of it's either levels that are big or linear games like in Last of Us, where you had that day one Seattle, where you would like the game is linear, but then you come into this big open space and and you have a lot of room to explore and discover. But then the game slowly starts telling its linear story again to another open space. So for me personally, I think it just varies from game to game. If the map needs to be as big as it is, because Red Dead Redemption 2, I think I brought up the last time we talked, is a great example of a game that's big and massive, but it worked for me. Because it was so detailed and diverse in its areas that I was always discovering something new or being fascinated in some sort of a way. So it varies from game to game for me.
I will agree with you that the way The Last of Us 2 incorporated open world elements into a linear gameplay was brilliant, because the thing that loses me with open world games is when you have an objective that should be extremely important, it no longer becomes important because the protagonist is drawn on to yet another settlement that needs your help. So it's like kind of that dynamic.
Good old Preston Garvey.
God, that guy. He's a great dude, but like I always just want to pop him the second I meet him because I know what he's going to make me do all the time. I love to explore. I love that games are really pretty, and I love the visuals. I don't have a problem with a big map. I have a problem with a lot of bloat, which is generally a progression system. Don't make me do all these extra quests just to rank up, because then it's not side stuff, it's main stuff, and that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Boki, what do you think?
I've been thinking about this a lot because to me, it's like close to heart, because the reason I play many games, I have like two things I love about games. One is great gameplay, and often it's like action games. It has great gameplay systems that makes you think and be like in a flow state, like Bloodborne or Halo or whatever. But then there's the other aspect of it, which I really, really love, and it's exploring a world, finding stuff that I didn't know were even possible, and these things being meaningful in some way. And a lot of big worlds today are designed in a way that you kind of know what you're gonna find.
Yeah.
After a while, you know what you're going to find. Like in Breath of the Wild, for instance. I love exploring in that game, but mostly because of the gameplay systems. It's like you're gliding, you're climbing mountains. All this stuff feels very immersive, but then you kind of know what you're going to find. It's these shrines, these towers, these little thingies. What are they called? These green guys if you collect them all, you get a big piece of poop, which kind of it's like that's the point of all that collecting. You get nothing; it's meaningless. And the game, in a way, is has a lot of lack of meaning in a way, because every time when you find something, it's this little guy. You find something interesting, you know that's this landmark. When you go there will be like a puzzle, and you will find this little guy. And it's too much of that. I need meaning in my exploration. So, like in Dark Souls, I find an item. I find a piece of equipment, something that I can use, or have like meaningful treasures, or areas and bosses that I didn't even know were supposed to be there, like discovering stuff. And that's what's lacking in open world games in general, I think.
Matt,
Absolutely.
What about you, Matt? Now, I know you're actually a fan of bigger games, and you tend to sometimes enjoy a more grindier element at times.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I would say one of the biggest examples of that for me was that I think this game just hit me at a particular moment where I did, and I just really loved it. Assassin's Creed Origins in 2017. I think that came out in October 2017, and it was the only game I played until God of War came out in April of 2018. So I spent like 6 or 7 months with it. I put in like 350 hours into it, and I just absolutely loved it. And I think really honestly what made me love it so much, despite the more grindy elements, despite the millions of side quests that just took you away from the narrative, because I thought that was actually a fantastic point you made about how map gets too big and you're just kind of taken away from the story and you kind of just forget where you're going with it. Maybe you lose momentum there. But what really hit me in Origins was the gameplay loop, and I think that was the first time that they had that new bow and arrow system that they introduced to that one, and that for this new trilogy, I absolutely love the bow and arrow in this new trilogy. But I liked it in Origins the best. I thought that I was actually really disappointed when it was so drastically different in Odyssey, and then in Valhalla, it's kind of like a mix between them both. But I liked Bayek's story and how he was just like an assassin, and he was just had his gear. He wasn't like a demigod with the the spirit of Leonidas. So just that gameplay loop, feeling like a more grounded assassin, and then all those different biomes. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that map size was really great because of the different biomes. Because when there are different biomes in a game, I kind of feel like it's kind of like when there's different like territories or different maps, like how like Mass Effect has different worlds, how like Witcher 3 had the different maps. Sometimes I feel like that's a good way of kind of breaking up, but so it's not just a gigantic world. But I would say, like, to hit on your point of just like the more grindy aspect, one that I really enjoyed was AC Origins, and I thought that Egypt was just beautiful. And then I loved what they did with the DLC as well. I thought that they because you go into like the Egyptian like afterlife or something like that, and I thought that map was really great too. I'm sitting here behind the province of Skyrim map. I think that's my favorite map, I'd say. And for the longest time, I thought that was like one of the biggest maps I'd ever seen. But then I saw a comparison where there are so many maps that are like even bigger. And I think that's the thing I love about Skyrim, because it really just fools the player into thinking that they're in this gigantic map. And it's not actually even the biggest map out there. Like, I saw a comparison that like Red Dead 1 is bigger than it. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head for me. Really, I just I'm a fan of a large map because I'm a primarily single player gamer. I enjoy single player games. I don't really love online, and when I have a really game to sink my teeth into, when there's a lot for me to do, and it's not just grinding and fetch quests and follow quests and automatic fail stealth sections, that's when I can really just like sink my teeth into it and really love to explore it. Another one I want to maybe touch on before I pass the mic over is Hitman. I think Hitman 3 and that whole trilogy, they do such a fantastic job with their maps. They just, and like the verticality that they get into in Hitman 3 is just so astounding. And just, they're like a labyrinth, like different areas lead to different ones that like you wouldn't expect. You can get to different points, just completely just not even realizing what you're doing. You're just following a path, and then you get to places that you weren't might be expecting to. Like, for instance, that one where you're at like this a rave in Germany where you're like trying to track down ICA agents. I found this area where I climbed a pole all the way up to the highest level, and I was like, holy crap, like that was amazing. Like, I found that one astounding. I feel like that was one of my first just like real experiences of like this. I think this is hands down my favorite map map system that I've played, and I've played a lot of them, I would say.
Hell yeah, dude! Great.
Yeah.
So
I've always.
sorry.
always like I like what you say about Hitman, because I think EO has one of the best level designs in all of their games, in all of gaming. I put them up there with like From Software. It's intricate, meaningful level design, and the sandboxes are amazing because there's so much to do. So
it makes me kind of want to ask this question next, because Matt, you kind of got me thinking. I think a lot of times we assume that a map size is going to be mutually exclusive with a certain amount of bloat or game size.
Mm-hmm.
So what if maps were really big and there was a lot of could games successfully have big maps and promote a lot of exploration, but still keep a lot of linear experiences, or maybe dynamically change the progression system so we didn't have all these fetch quests and stuff? How much different do you guys feel that would change the game experience?
Dude, so going back to what I originally started with, I think Boki and Matt both hit it out of the park, because I think it really comes down to uniqueness and just variety. And by the way, Origins is probably my favorite of the Assassin's Creed games, of the newer ones, just because Egypt is so compelling alone. Like being able to explore the Sphinx or the pyramids, there was so much intrigue and interest there that I think, like, and again, Red Dead for me, you're finding like little stories, little little vignettes. You stumble upon it, and it feels like there's so much meaning and design of how they'll place little intricate story beats of, you're like, well, what happened here? And you don't actually feel like you're wasting your time trying to piece together all the clues, because it feels like they put a lot of heart into designing these little tiny environmental experiences that you stumble upon. Whereas, like, for me personally, like Odyssey, something I didn't enjoy about Odyssey was, one, it feels like it took so long to kill each enemy that the grind became, it just lacked satisfaction, in my opinion. And the map was so big, of course, too. And I think Ubisoft specifically knew what they were doing when they designed it, because they sold XP boosters. So it's like, the map is so big and the points of interest seem to be kind of so far in between that you had to do so many of these side quests to even level up to where it did become the main focus. And you're like, well, it's going to take me 2 hours to reach the next level to where I can even see the next main story beat, which is what I'm interested in, because we live in a time where there's so many games to play. There's so many incredible experiences. And it's like, do I want to spend this much time on one game just consuming? It's like going to a buffet and only eating macaroni and cheese. It's like there's so many games out there that I want to explore and eat a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Unless it's just incredible, then just bring me that. So I don't think map size. Yeah, map size, if it's done right, I mean, you can have small maps that are empty, tiny maps that feel just boring to explore. So, yeah, I don't even know if it is map size that I have an issue with. I think it's what Boki said, of just these unique experiences. Finding an item in Dark Souls, it is unique because that's the only item of its type. So when you stumble upon it, you feel like you've found something special. So yeah.
So then it does sound like it is more of a progression. So I actually loved Odyssey, but I also love Greece. So I'm obsessed with,
and that makes sense.
Greek history. So I loved exploring the map and then looking at all the historical pieces. But that game was way too bloated and it was too grindy. My first playthrough took entirely too long. I would love it if they would just shave that stuff down. So I'm of the opinion I enjoy maps and I enjoy it when it's unique and when I can explore, but I don't, like you said, Gurni, as much as I love macaroni and cheese, it's not the only thing I want to eat. Yeah. I would like, The Outer Worlds is one of my favorite RPGs because they made a lot of solid content, a lot of story, a lot of visuals, in what, Matt, 30, 40 hours that
Yeah.
a lot of other games would take 120.
Right.
Yeah.
Boki?
I'm listening to you guys, and I have you're saying so many interesting things that like my mind's going a million different places. Like it's a big map and with all these markers, and I have to pick one. But I think that the most interesting things I'm hearing here is, can we make like a big world, but at the same time maybe keep some of that level design finesse that we see in, for instance, Dark Souls or Hitman or The Last of Us, where this the design of the levels are meticulously designed in a way to amplify the gameplay and the decisions you have to make moving through them. And I think that maybe a game like Halo Infinite, for instance, they are saying that this map will be the largest ever. That's what I'm hearing. It's going to be bigger than Red Dead Redemption 2. And I'm like, wow, shit, how can you do this while at the same time keeping the level design that makes Halo games so great and do it in open world? And maybe you can do it. Imagine like you're exploring and then you find these crazy ruins or something. And then it's like when you enter it, it becomes like a normal Halo level.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying? Or like
Silent Cartographer. Do you remember
yes,
that level from the first Halo? And that was like that open space.
Yes.
But you were like driving around and stuff, and that was one of my favorite Halo levels.
Same here, and I think they're trying to capture that experience, but in a way larger scale. They're probably going to put like real Halo levels on this map. You know, the original Halo Combat Evolved with that level was like these long ass levels. They were very long. It felt like an open world.
Mm-hmm.
And the same experience can be had in like The Last of Us Part 2, because the levels are so long and it feels like you're always sensing the grander world around them. They are always in like a meaningful position. Like it feels like the world is larger than they are because of that.
Matt?
Yeah, that's actually really, just like Boki said, I feel like my mind's going in a million different places. I think that The Last of Us 2 kind of gets at what your original question was, Crystal, where you were like, can games like, it was like, you said something like, progress in a way that like dynamically the level progression is different, it's not grindy, and then maybe the maps aren't so big. And I think that Last of Us really nails that, where you're stuck in the small environments, and then you're following the linear path, and then the world opens up, and then I just think that was a really impressive way to handle game map size. So I thought that was really interesting that you said that. A couple other things I wanted to mention was I thought that the Spider-Man games the map size is perfect for that, and I actually think that I would love to see Spider-Man put into like more of like a GTA map, because like because the Manhattan is basically Algonquin in GTA 4, and it's like he's just swinging around that. It would be really impressive to see him like go around all the different boroughs. And you might say something like, "Oh, well, there's no skyscrapers," but I think they really proved that doesn't matter in the way that they had that like zip like point, whatever it was, like the point launch, where you could just like go to any single different point and launch off of it. And he could also get like really low to the ground and keep his momentum. So I really think that game I would love to see in Spider-Man 2, or maybe it's going to be Spider-Man, because we have Miles and we have Peter now. I would love to see more of a size for that, because I could fire on Spider-Man right now and just like sit down for the next 6 hours and only swing around. I think that that's like one of the most therapeutic and funnest and just best experiences in the gaming that I ever had. But I also would say that I'm biased because Spider-Man was some of the very first games I've ever played. Like I remember like Spider-Man 1 on my PlayStation 1 and thinking like swinging around and like just thinking like, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. I can't believe I'm watching Spider-Man swing around. And then if I had had that game when I was like 6, that would have been like, wow, I wouldn't have been, I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have never left and just been a hermit in my room. But so I do love those games. Another one that I think really does a great job is The Witcher 3. Like we touched on that a little bit, but there was an experience that I wanted to share with just, that game's perfect from just like the huge open areas down into like the little areas that you can get yourself into. Like for instance, I came into like abandoned camp, and I got into this like cellar area. Like I didn't know where anyone was. It seemed abandoned, so I was just kind of walking around, just exploring. I went into this like wine cellar area, and there was just like this stone cellar like hallway. Then all of a sudden, they were onto me. They knew I was there, and all of a sudden, like 10, 15 guys rushed me all at once in this tiny cellar, this one hallway, like Daredevil, like that scene in Daredevil, like the TV show. And it was incredible. I was using the fire, I was using the just the swords and whatnot, and I killed everyone and didn't even take any damage. And like I just controlled them, and I was like, all right, they are not getting past me. And I obliterated them. It was incredible. So I think Witcher 3 really nailed just the map. And I would say that's why I was so disappointed with Cyberpunk, because I was like, CD Projekt Red, you can do this. We know you can do this. You proved that you can do this. And then just to see Cyberpunk just be so, it's beautiful. It looks great. The graphics are great. This Night City is it's all surface level though, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They really promised like a Red Dead Redemption style living world, and that they didn't deliver on that. And I would say that Red Dead Redemption 2 is in a league of its own with like maybe The Last of Us, where it's like an experience and it's not just like a video game. To where like, go back to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I thought that was one where it was just a video game as a video game. It's like it was great. I enjoyed it, but a lot of my bias on that game comes from how much I loved Origins. So and it just seems so radically different for Odyssey. And the fact that like there are quest markers that put people's heads, I just thought that was like, that's such a video game trope that like Red Dead Redemption, you just walk down the street and then stuff just happens,
Yeah.
So
it's organic.
Exactly.
Definitely. So then let me ask you guys what you think on this question. If video game developers were to scale back the sizes of the game and the experience as far as the number of content hours, do you think that people, because I mean, I know I saw a lot of people be very vocal about saying, well, Miles Morales is too small. It's a DLC. We're paying that much for a game that's that small, but it was incredible. So what are your thoughts on like that mentality and that dynamic?
Of scaling it back a bit?
Yeah, I mean, do you think that it would be primarily received well by the gaming community if developers did that? Or are developers making these big games because people feel like, well, I'm getting a value because I got 120 hours of bloat and exploration versus 30 hours of really solid, good. So what do you kind of think about that? If I'm explaining it well, what do you think about that?
I understand. I actually think that that was an issue before. Like games were starting to get bigger and bigger for a reason, and people wanted their money's worth. But when you look at like Miles Morales and the sales figures and how well it's doing, I think that smaller games are profitable. But you won't get everyone on board for that. But there's enough people, like gaming is so huge that there's enough people to make like a really profitable game, smaller size, and like being a masterpiece or whatever, at 8 or 15 hours, like Miles maybe. But the thing with open worlds, I kind of want them to be a bit longer. Like, I mean, Miles Morales is an incredible open world, and Spider-Man 2, but it's also the world feels more like a skate park. It's more like Tony Hawk. You go into this experience and the world is like your playground. It's not so much about exploring. It's more about just swinging around and having a lot of fun. And maybe the same thing can be said for like Breath of the Wild. A lot of the charm in that game is like flying around, climbing, etc. Death Stranding maybe. But what I think is like smaller open worlds can be very successful, and I think there's no reason to make these extremely large and bloated worlds out of like I don't know, economical perspective anymore.
Yeah, I think it's such a case-by-case basis, and I really think it comes down to developer talent and how passionate they are about the project. Because going back to CD Projekt, and I think you nailed it, Matt. For such a large world, it did have spaces that felt really intimate and just fleshed out. Like there was a history there, and you really felt like you were uncovering something. And whenever you found like a new piece of armor or the blueprints to go make the armor, anyways, it felt really special. You felt like you had really experienced something meaningful. Where it's like, part of the issue I have with the Assassin's Creed is it just doesn't have that same level of care. Like it's big, but I will say to Valhalla's credit, I think Valhalla handled the map size the best because it took the Spider-Man approach where you could send your bird up and then it would give you these little blips of everything that was around you. So you could just be in one area and you're like, okay, there's something interesting over here. So it kind of it condensed the area that you were exploring. It made it palatable to explore it in a meaningful way. But still, you weren't uncovering really personal, interesting. Maybe, and I guess that varies from person to person of what you find interesting. Because some people who have studied the Vikings and they've watched the Vikings show, I'm sure they loved it. But for me, a lot of that didn't mean too much to me. But I really loved like the puzzles that you would encounter in Valhalla. There seemed to be a little more thinking involved. If a house was locked, there could be like a way to get into that house, and then you would get in and you would find it. But you were still only finding resources or like a treasure that just didn't mean anything to you. So it felt like time that wasn't well spent in the long run. So again, I think that the map and the size of it, I would be fine with smaller scale. For me, I'm always a quality over quantity approach. If you gave me a 20-hour Ubisoft game that was no fat, no gristle, just trimmed down, dude, I think Ubisoft still has the chops to make Game of the Year games. I really do, because there were moments in Valhalla where I was like, damn, Ubisoft is getting really good at designing these environments, and they're starting to feel more detailed, and the spaces are starting to feel real inhabited. But it's so damn long that that the length of that game became a detriment to me, because it was taking too much. There wasn't enough butter to spread over that big ass piece of toast. You know what I mean? Like it, and but I loved Miles Morales. Miles Morales was short, but again, you could take it at your own pace. You could just swing around the city. You could do the little side quests, and take it at your own pace. But Miles Morales had a lot of that same care to it, where it just felt really, I don't know, you could tell that Insomniac poured a lot of passion into it. So for me personally, I don't even know if it comes down to map size, big or small. And the gaming community is going to bitch about anything. A game journal says, oh, Resident Evil 8 is only 9 hours long. It's like, yeah, well, dipshits, every Resident Evil since the history of time has been about that length. This isn't anything new. The longest Resident Evils were like Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 6, but apart from that, they were all 9 hours long. So I think there's just this, the journos can type something up and make a headline and present it in a negative light, and people will just be like, oh, it's only 9 hours long, but what's in that 9 hour experience? You can watch a 2 hour movie that can change your life. So I don't think it has anything to do with quantity. I think you can take something and make it 15 to 20 hours. But if there's no bloat, that 15 to 20 hours is going to be special.
For sure. Yeah.
I used to love Ubisoft. Like, used to love Ubisoft.
Me too.
And they're full of filler. And to me, the way it translates is like going out to eat. If you go to a really nice restaurant that you get a small amount of food and it's very simple food, right? You get like a great steak, one side. It's expensive. You get a lot of food, right? There's no filler. There's no fluff. It's just really good quality food and it's simple. I feel like Ubisoft has gotten lost in the filler and they're capable of making these wonderful 5-star steakhouse meals, but they're delivering us like Taco Bell meat filler because they want to make these giant games that they can say you get a shitload of content and a big map for $60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, real quick, that's a great point too, because the two contrasting parts, when you eat junk food, you feel like shit afterwards. But when you eat a quality meal, it stays with you throughout the rest of the day. It literally makes you feel good after you've eaten it. Where it's like, that's the same concept with these games. When you play a quality game, you continue experiencing it up here after you're done playing it. But when you're done with a junk food game, you don't think about it in the same way. It's like, oh, I just want to play more. But no, like when I played The Last of Us, philosophically, my mind was just eating it up even after I had experienced it. It wasn't, I didn't want to continue playing it because it was addictive. I continued thinking about it because it was inspirational.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So Matt, let me ask you this because you're a fan of big games and you don't mind the grind and you enjoy that bloat because you kind of get lost in it a bit. How would you feel being somebody who typically tends to be a fan of that environment? How would you feel if things were shrunken? Maybe just the scale was smaller, like Gurni said, but how do you think you would perceive it if things got more like Miles where they were much more compact?
Yeah, that question gets right to something that I was thinking about. I think that a game like that, I think, should have a smaller price tag, just kind of like Miles did. I think that's like a $40 game and a $50 game on PlayStation. The only reason it was $70 at launch was because it also came with the remastered Spider-Man PS5. I think that Miles Morales does everything. It takes all of the like perfect parts of Spider-Man 2018 and puts it into that game. You don't, like, even though I do like put that Spider-Man game up there with like one of the greatest games I've ever played, I can see the parts of it that needed improvement. Don't force stealth on me. Don't make me be Mary Jane. Don't make me be Miles Morales without superpowers. I want to be Spider-Man. I'm fine to walk around as Peter Parker because, he is Spider-Man. I'll do the lab stuff, but I like the fact that they let me auto-skip the puzzles. But if you let me auto-skip them, don't have them in the game at all. And
yeah, for real.
Yeah. And just, Crystal, that was just such a great question because it really just got to the heart of something I was thinking about. Like, I really think that Miles took all the great parts of Spider-Man 2018 and put them into just that very digestible game. Because if you look at it, it's the exact same map. That was something that I kind of was scratching my head at people saying like, oh, it's so short, it's not worth the money. It's the exact same map. It's a player like me who can just watch Spider-Man swing around for hours on end. I played that game a lot. And it took me a long time to beat the story because I would just stop to just swing around and just enjoy that. Because I noticed the little intricacies of his animation where he just didn't look as skilled as Peter Parker at swinging. He was like, it's like Gurni, I'm not sorry, Boki, how you said, it's more like a skate park map. It's like a Tony Hawk game. That's actually a perfect way of putting it. And it was as if Miles Morales had a goofy stance, like in Tony Hawk when you select that as your stance. Yeah. So, and like how he could swing backwards, how he could there was just such a difference in how he was. Exactly. And, it really gets into the thing that they said in the funny thing of when they said in the trailer where they said they captured the exaggerated swagger of a black teenager. I thought that was great. right on the head with that game. But really, really great question, Crystal. And it makes me also think of the 2016 Ratchet and Clank. That was only $40 at the time, and it was short. But I thought that it was great. I thought that it did. I thought that it was really a great game. I mean, it was basically a retelling of the very first game from 2002, and that tied to that movie. But I thought it was a great experience for the value because sometimes you get a used game for $40. A $60 game, $70 game, you're lucky to get it used at $40. Sometimes unless it's like years later. And another thing I would say, actually touch on the Ubisoft point we were making. I would love to see them go back to the trilogy. I would love to see an Ezio. I would love to see like So I don't. It's like you were saying, Gurni, a good game sticks with you. I remember my journey with Ezio. I'm fuzzy on Edward. I'm fuzzy on Arno. I'm fuzzy on the Fry twins. You know, I know Bayek so well because I spent so much time with him. But I'm fuzzy on Cassandra and Alexios. You know, I spend spending so much time not doing the main story in Assassin's Creed Valhalla that I'm not super invested in Eivor. I like him, you know, but I'm not super invested. And the one thing that what turns me off to Ubisoft is the fact that you said that like their games were expensive, they give you so much, but then they have been just flooding us with microtransactions. You know, and you know, sometimes I've been weak in like I've bought some of them, but usually I try to do them only if I have a gift card. You know, I try not to spend my own actual money on it, and I think that's got to go. Because we're just, you know, when you buy the microtransactions, you're fueling the culture of that they want this to happen. You're fueling that thing that like, oh, well, look at the price point, people are buying it, let's keep doing it. You know, it's like I'm Ubisoft making a Star Wars game, I'm equally as excited and hesitant for that because it could go really well or it could go really badly. And just also to touch on Star Wars for another moment, just get back to our the map size. I thought Jedi Fallen Order's maps were a little too big, and I thought that they were confusing. They were like a labyrinth, and they did something where I think the key to a good open world or a good map is waypoints and fast travel. You need those. Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the one that was on PS3, didn't have waypoints. That was extremely confusing. And games that don't have fast travel, it's like, Spider-Man didn't need fast travel for me. I barely used it. I only did it for the achievement, but I'm glad that it was there when I wanted it, and I just think that to not have waypoints or fast travel is not a good thing. And like, actually, even something that I'm liking with, I was checking out Control because it was a PlayStation Plus game. I like that they let you bring up the map and let you see it as you're moving. I thought that was very cool, and I would like to see that come up in video games more often.
Thank you for doing your homework. I hear your notes. I hear the paper rustling of your copious notes, and I appreciate that. I don't know that might be the first for this show. So then let me ask you guys, I want to hear everybody's opinion on this. What do you think? Do you think that a cost should be relative to the size of the game? Like, do you think that moving forward, now we're seeing, $70 games? Do you think that smaller games should have a smaller price tag? Or is there a time that you guys felt you paid too much for a smaller game? Or do you think that the majority will still have that quality over quantity mentality in this transition?
In a way, I think that it's very important to keep the prices equal, because a quality game, like without bloat, that's like an intense experience and designed meticulously in every aspect, is like a fine as meal. You go out and you pay $70 and you eat something really, really good. That should be encouraged in a way. So I think maybe the prices should stay the same unless these big ass games reach the same level of pacing and quality throughout the whole experience as these smaller games. I think we should encourage the smaller game design, like with the price tag. So that's my opinion on it.
You guys have any thoughts?
Matt?
Yeah, I think that I maybe just speaking for myself, I find a little gripe with when I don't play fighting games very often because I only play the story. I don't bring them onto online because I just suck at them. I don't like to spend full price on a fighting game or maybe even a Call of Duty game where I know I'm only going to play the story mode. So those kind of games I only get on sale or I wait for like a deep deal. A deal I meant to say. For instance, I think I bought Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the new one, on at launch. Paid the full $60. I played Warzone once. I did online twice, but I did the whole story mode. And I don't think that was really worth my $60.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Price for me, honestly, I've never been too caught up with price. I think since I've become, older, like when we were younger, I feel like we didn't have any money. We had to trade our games and we had to do stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, it's my time that I value.
Yeah.
My time to me is so much more important than the money that I spend on it. Where, and I know that not everybody is that way, you know, because I'm 33, so I can't put myself in the shoes of the, you know, the 14, 15, 16-year-old who's into gaming. I can't imagine, you know, like, you know, for as many jokes as I make about Game Pass, I think Game Pass would be fucking awesome if I was, you know, younger and I didn't have access to all these games. I mean, I can't imagine how cool that is for them. But to me, Game Pass doesn't mean that much because I don't have the time to play all these games anyways. So it's like it's a perceived value of like I'm really only paying for what I'm capable of playing in that time, which it's like some people will only play 2 games you know, on Game Pass. They only have 2 games or 3 games maybe at most. And honestly, I think the rate at which games drop in price, it's kind of sickening to me that Nintendo still charges full price for their games, but yet I work in a used game store. And like Uncharted 4 is like $5. I mean, and like we're talking like massive quality here, Naughty Dog for $5. So it's like the rate at which games depreciate in value, especially these newer games. I mean, price. I don't know. It's a tough thing. I mean, price to me isn't really that important, but because I don't even know how to monetize an experience in my head. There are some games that are 3 hours long that I would absolutely pay $70 for because they changed my life. And there are games that I've spent 200 hours in that I couldn't give 2 shits about, but yet they were addictive enough for me to spend that. I don't know, you know. I think value is completely subjective, and like Resident Evil 3 is a great example. People love to crap on that game for how long it is. But I've replayed that game so many times that the experience to me was worth the money. You know, because I kept going back to it even though it was short. It was good to me. So value is so subjective, I think, at the end of the day.
It really is. And I'm more of a time focus. Well, I'll be 40 this year, right? So like I don't have another 40 years left to game, guys. So like I have to start thinking differently because, you know, we've all got families and jobs and life, and it is hard. I look at the value as $70 for a game that who knows how much I'll play it. 30 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours. Fallout 4, you're talking 800 and something hours over the course of years. $70 I can blow at the movies and on a few beers. $70 I can blow at dinner. Beers. Yeah, I'm about to go like, yeah, like, I mean, you can blow that really easy. So I do like that you bring that up. I think it is subjective for folks. And an example that I kind of wanted to bring up in regards to Ubisoft, right? If we look at Ghost Recon Wildlands, big game, big ass game. Okay. $60. Love that game. I have so much fun playing that game. I played it multiple times, really enjoyed it, loved the mechanics, right? Breakpoint, same size game, same price. Just it didn't wow me. It didn't give me that experience.
Even so the mechanics were even more complex too.
Oh, it was so janky. So I think as we all talk, it sounds like in different ways we're saying the same thing. The polish and the presentation is really important. I think we can all agree if Cyberpunk had been more completed and polished, we would all say this is a great damn game.
But yeah, I enjoyed Cyberpunk. I mean, it was Cyberpunk was a game with so many idiosyncrasies though that it's hard to recommend to anybody because you're not getting this straight linear experience. I mean, like that game is so compartmentalized in my brain. But I enjoyed my time with Cyberpunk. But it's not a game I would recommend, you know?
I am still playing it, actually. I'm on my second run. I want to say I'm around 160 hours. I'm having a good time, but I'm always honest with people about the positives and the negatives. But I would like to ask I am going to officially rename the game to Judy Dating Simulator.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. I
I
can
had
watch.
to go there.
Absolutely.
So then let's talk really quick. 'Cause I think Matt, you brought it up. Microtransactions. So if a company like Ubisoft decides, or if any company says they want to go in the direction of microtransactions, should that imply a different value on the price tag or a different value on our time in the game? What do you guys think of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think if they're going to extract more money from you, then absolutely the game should be cheaper. There's no questions. I mean,
honestly, it should be kind of free in a way. Because look at like Genshin Impact. That game is super successful, but you get a full game and you get a lot of free updates. But they have this gacha system, so for people that are interested in spending money in it, they can do that. Ubisoft and all these big developers, they kind of half-ass it. They are kind of doing the free-to-play games. I mean, Genshin Impact is a great game. It's great. It's on the level of like a new Ubisoft game, but it's free, and they are making so much money from it. So if you're gonna do that thing, go all in and do it. I mean, do it.
Can you guys, this might be a very hard question. It just popped into my head. If it's possible, can you guys, just to give examples for people who are watching and listening, a really big, bloated, large game that you really, really, really loved, and a very small, fast game that you really, really loved?
So 2 examples, like a big one and a small one?
Yeah, a big one and a little one.
Well, Red Dead Redemption 2, love that game. Very little bloat, in my opinion. Because 2, I think there's a games are different experiences for different people. Boki could play Red Dead Redemption 2 and only care about the story and only be doing the bits, and Matt might play Red Dead Redemption 2 and, only be focusing on the guns and the shooting mechanics. And when I play Red Dead Redemption 2, for me, it was a nature simulator. Like it felt, I mean, you have over 500 species, I think, of different animals in that game. And each one of them has their own specific animations for like how you skin it and like, I mean, when you're fishing and he pulls it out of the water. I mean, just the detail on all these little animal species is so mesmerizing that a developer literally spends all that time, putting these details in, and then this world is just living around you. Like that space to me, I felt like it was just a space that I embodied, and it felt lived in, and it feels real. And honestly, for me, Red Dead Redemption 2 has set the bar so high that I don't even know when the next time it's going to be broken, to be honest. I don't even know if it can be broken, because it seems like even Rockstar themselves are changing their approach to their future games with the success of their online ecosystem. Like, I'm like, when are we ever going to get a Red Dead Redemption 2? So that is absolutely probably my favorite experience in terms of bigness, because it's so diverse and just sprinkled with seasoning of just different things that you can give your attention to. And small, honestly, I think recently, Abzu. I just recently played Abzu. I beat it in probably 2 or 3 hours, but there was so much detail shoved into that short 3-hour experience. And I don't think there are any waypoints in the game, but the game is designed in such a way that the game speaks to you and it's guiding you forward without having anything telling you where to go or what to do. You just kind of have this intuitive feeling of how to progress. And it was such an like a spiritual experience. So probably Abzu for the smaller and Red Dead for the bigger.
Is Abzu an indie game?
I think so. Yeah, it's made by Giant Squid, who also did. They just recently made Pathless on PS5, which I haven't played yet, but that's on my short list.
Okay, so check out Abzu, folks at home.
Abzu's awesome.
Amazing.
Matt, Boki, are you guys ready with your list, or do you need to think about it a little bit more?
I'm ready. If you
go ahead, do it.
I think my favorite like large game, Breath of the Wild. Let's go with that, because I talked a bit of smack about it earlier, but it's still probably my favorite open world game ever, and that's because of the gameplay. I mean, the game is like a brilliantly disciplined design. Sandbox. It's like a Zelda open world sandbox, and the actual gameplay and exploring through the mechanics of the game, like climbing and gliding and just making your way through these amazing, beautiful biomes. And that itself is enough to put it above most games I've played, and I've put maybe 500 hours into it. And also, it's like the sandbox. Oh my God, the gameplay. There's so many possibilities of things you can do in that game that people are still like sharing stuff that nobody knew you could do. Now, many years after, you could see like a Japanese Breath of the Wild account doing crazy shit in that game that you're like, what the fuck is happening? What? I didn't know this was possible. That's how great the sandbox is. So you can have endless amount of fun in that game, but it depends on how you play it. You can't like, oh shit, I'm gonna do the story like an ordinary Zelda game and just go from shrine to shrine. I don't play that like that. I just go into the world and do crazy stuff and learn about the systems and how they work. Smaller game. Okay, we were talking about Abzu. Let's go for Pathless, because I really love that game. It's really underappreciated. It's one of the PS5 games that released during a launch period that took my breath away in a way, because it's so. It's like I don't know. It's like reaching the heights of games like Breath of the Wild, but in a very smaller scale. Also, very gameplay focused. The way traversal works in that game is amazing. You use your bow and you shoot your way. You move by shooting stuff, and there's awesome little like finesse to how it works. But it's also very simple. Everything can be learned quite quickly, and then it's all up to your own creativity and how you approach the game. But it's also short. And still, it has some of the best bosses and stuff I've experienced in games in a long while. It reminds me of a good Zelda game.
Matt, are you?
I can highly recommend that.
Yeah, Pathless, and both of them are very good. So
Giant Squid, shout out to them.
Yeah, they're great.
Matt, are you ready with your list? Are you good?
I am. So I think that I would say, if I was trying to, like, as I was speaking, trying to really get into the recesses of my mind to think about like small games, because I would say that generally I do kind of gravitate towards the bigger ones. But I'd say a really small one that I absolutely loved from years ago was Limbo. The black and white one, side scroller with the little boy. There's like the gigantic spider. That was one of the first games that I played with my wife when we were just dating. It was one of the first games that like kind of really got her into it, because she kind of struggles with like games where they have too many systems that are too large. So when I can get like a really simple game to get her into, then we have a lot of fun with that. Like probably the most grand one that I was able to get her into was Ratchet and Clank, I would say. And then I actually want to rank. I think I would rank this one on the small to medium side, just because based off of the campaigns are short. If you can take it level by level, I'd say Hitman. I think I wouldn't say that's a large game. I wouldn't say that's a huge game. There's no bloat there, just like Gurni said in regard to Red Dead Redemption. And I would actually say that I would have said Red Dead myself. However, since I was already said, I want to throw out, we also talked about Witcher 3 and Spider-Man. I would say that's really what some of the ones that I would say, are my favorite of the huge ones. However, my pick, I would say, is in honor of the recent release of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I would say Mass Effect and I would consider that over the course of all 3 games, because Mass Effect was like the very first time where I ever saw a created character go into 3 different games, and you wouldn't believe how. I mean, I think you probably can sympathize with how just disappointed I was with Mass Effect 3. I was so disappointed with the ending of Mass Effect 3 that I honestly didn't even finish it. And I'm excited now to go back and actually do finish it, because I consider Mass Effect 1 a fantastic game, just a really great game. But Mass Effect 2 is one of the greatest games that I have ever played. I did everything in that. I mean, I even like my very first save file didn't realize that I had to do all of the loyalty quests for everyone to live at the end, and I had actually perfectly saved it like right before this like major moment where you like were kind of the point of no return. So I had the ending where it didn't go very well. A bunch of people died. I reloaded. I spent time grinding through all the legendary stuff, all of the going to planet to planet, get the resources and whatnot, and just so I could get the best possible ending. And I made it so that no one died, and that was my actual definitive playthrough of that one. And so I would say that's the one I would pick, because Mass Effect 2 is it's perfect. I think, in my opinion, it's so awesome. And just the creativity of just like how they make you be like, I was thinking like, oh, how are they going to let me recreate my character? Just the creativity and just that opening scene in Mass Effect 2, I think is one of my favorite game openings of all time. Really, Mass Effect, I couldn't recommend Mass Effect more. Especially now where we are, it's really great. And even Andromeda, I would say, is it's good. It's not as good, obviously, but the combat's great in Mass Effect Andromeda. I would actually even say that after playing Mass Effect Andromeda, I slightly prefer it to the old style of the combat, because it can get really clunky. It really feels like a PS3 game. And I really loved in Mass Effect Andromeda that ability that like jump jet you had. You can jump and you can like go forward and whatnot with the jetpack. I wouldn't say that Mass Effect Andromeda is not in the league of the trilogy at all, and especially because the characters are weaker. You didn't really care about the crew, I would say. But I would say that's my choice. Mass Effect is just I think just it's up there with me for Red Dead. It's just Mass Effect is an experience, and I would actually even say that I prefer like Mass Effect science fiction to Star Wars or Star Trek, because Mass Effect is just it's perfect. It's BioWare at its best, and I hope it's to where, just like we said with Ubisoft, I hope BioWare can get back to the days of Mass Effect.
So before I give my list, I do have a question for you, Matt. Do you think that you enjoy giant games because you're LeBron James size? Or does that just happen to be coincidence that you're a very, very, very tall fellow and you happen to like very big games?
It's probably a coincidence, but maybe not a coincidence. Like they say, there's no coincidences.
We might be onto something. So let's see my list. Well, my favorite open world game is Horizon Zero Dawn, but I don't consider that a big game because I feel like the progression system was great and there wasn't a lot of bloat, and exploration for me was like it was for Gurni in Red Dead. So my big game that I really loved, and it's not even a great game, I'm just going to say it, I love the Fallout games. Like New Vegas is freaking fantastic.
Oh, New Vegas.
That's a masterpiece. Wow.
It's a great game. It's a great game, but it has bugs. It's what it is. It's a giant game. It has funky glitches and weird bugs and stuff goes wrong, but I love it. It gives it character. It's huge. I liked Fallout 4 just as much. I've got close to 1,000 hours in it. I normally don't like grind or bloat, but there's something about getting completely lost in the environments they give me that those are just the rare games where I could just get lost and play one run for 2 or 3 months and just love it. Small game. This is hard because there's so many small games I really like. I think I have to go with Portal 2 on this. I know at least like co-op, I want to say that was significantly under 10 hours. 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. Is the game much larger than I'm thinking, or does that sound about
That sounds about right.
That's about right.
Okay. GLaDOS was a genius. By the way, I love the Delamain reference to GLaDOS. Did anybody get that in Cyberpunk where she took over that made my day. But I love GLaDOS. I love the little turrets. I love the puzzles. I just loved everything about Portal 2 and just thought it was a brilliant masterpiece of this little gem that just completely did stuff that felt different from anything else. And I love to see games like that.
Horizon Zero Dawn, that's actually what I'm playing right now. I actually wrote a little note down real quick about Horizon Zero Dawn. That's a game where like the combat it really like fuels that game, because like it's so awesome to be like in the weeds and you pull up your little, what's the earpiece called? Your focus. Your focus. Yeah, and you're like looking at each individual piece of the dinosaur and reading its weaknesses like in real time. And like that, you have to shoot all those little points to cause like major damage. Then you got like your rope caster and your tripwires, and like it's just it's a great game.
It is. That's what I loved about it. There's a lot of, I appreciate games that will just let me go like wild, just run in there and just spray bullets and pray that I don't die. I love that. Horizon will never be that game.
It's not
strategic. Like you have to think about, when am I going to attack? What am I going to attack with? Where am I going to attack? How is that going to affect me? And I felt like it took those strategic elements, which took a lot of patience, and I'm not the most patient person. It combined that with, now I got these parts off and I can run and grab it. And so it really combined all of these elements so well for me that I didn't feel like it was too stealthy or too melee or too much arrow or too much that I loved finding all those little hidden points. Like, you'd go to a mountaintop and you'd get from your focus, like what was there prior and the lore, and just, I could get goosebumps talking about that game. I felt like Guerrilla did so many things right, and I never, ever felt fatigued in that game. Just never felt fatigued with the open world. So speaking of that, Gurni's is going to be Red Dead Redemption 2. But are there other examples you guys have of really big open world games that you just don't ever feel, or it just takes a very long time to feel that fatigue with?
Witcher 3.
Witcher 3. I'd say Skyrim.
Witcher 3.
Yeah, Skyrim. I mean, honestly, Fallout. I think Fallout is actually a great example of a large open world that, I mean, people shit on Bethesda these days, but it was really, I think Fallout 76 is really what soured people. But I mean, their legacy is great. I mean, people can say what they want, and as a publisher too. I mean, they've given us a new Doom game. They've given us Doom Eternal, Dishonored. I mean, Bethesda's really the shit. So, and I'm a PlayStation, I wouldn't say fanboy, but I certainly love PlayStation. And so for all these PlayStation guys to act like Bethesda ain't shit since Xbox bought them, I think they're full of shit, to be honest with you. Because Bethesda's great, and I think truly there is potential with Starfield. Now, granted, I do think Fallout 76 was a shit show, and really spoiled a lot of their legacy, kind of the same way Cyberpunk kind of did CD Projekt dirty, but these are choices that the big execs made. I mean, they're still insanely talented developers, but with Fallout, you would go in a vault and you're finding all these little, notes, and there's a story there that you can piece together that give that world so much flavor, and like that's just one vault. I mean, and then you go out and there's a world of shit to explore and find.
So many.
I think Fallout's great.
It is. So many stories. Like your NPCs have stories. Every sad stories. Fallout 4 had so many just sad moments that you'd never know it's there if you don't just explore. And I mean, I have all the DLC from Fallout 4. I loved that lore. I loved that exploration. I loved discovering things that you could miss.
Goofy shit too. Like there's a prime example of there's like a one of the buildings you walk into. There's a dude in a bathtub, and he's surrounded by all these mannequins with machetes in their hands. It's like, what the fuck happened here? Yeah.
Funky stuff like that. Where I'm like, what the hell is this? I remember the first time walking to go where the Adam Cat's location is, further south in the map, and hearing the kid in the refrigerator, the dunk, 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 and I'm like, what is, something's banging? Is there like a hidden vault or what's going on? And then discovering the ghoul kid and then like deciding how you're gonna react. Like, I love RPGs and I always take copious notes, like, on this spot in the map, find this, and I will give myself notes next time, like, be a dick to that kid, or like, say this. Like, I enjoy, but I will say it's hard. There are some times that I just, like, I have to be a dick this playthrough in this RPG, and I just feel terrible.
Oh, I can't do that.
I just, like, I can't tell Pavardi no. I can't tell Judy no. It's not possible. Like, I can't.
Well, I tell Pavardi. I was like, Pavardi, I'm sorry, this town is gone.
Oh, I love her. It's hard for me to tell Piper no. Like,
but Pavardi, like, I'm like, look, my reasoning was, Pavardi, you need to get out of your comfort zone. So I was like, I'm going to destroy your city and you're going to come with me and explore the outreaches of space. And you know what? She did. She got on my ship and we explored the outreaches of space.
I ran Felix off. I decided I wanted to know how much I could piss him off by siding with the board, and he got mad. But that's part of the fun. And some of these giant games give you this kind of excitement, or like an Origins map, when I want to say it was like my third playthrough when I realized, oh my god, there's a secret hole in this pyramid and there's freaking armor in here that I hadn't found in the first 160 hours. So sometimes there's those gems in there.
Yeah.
So as we work on wrapping up, what do you guys kind of want to close with, or what are some other thoughts you have, or other examples, or kind of other statements that you want to make on the topic?
I would love to share. I would love to hear your favorite moments in these open world games. Like, it could be organic or it could be something that was scripted. My own favorite moment was very tragic, actually, because I had a horse in Red Dead Redemption 2 that I loved very much. I mean, you kind of care for these the horse and the animals, and they made me care for her, and I was proud of her, you know. And then we were out exploring, me and the horse, and I heard some noises, and I like jumped off the horse, and I like, what's going on here? What's this? This looked like some strange camp or something. Then suddenly I hear timber. And I'm like, what the fuck? What's going on? And my horse is standing there, you know. And I didn't realize what was happening, but I was shocked because that fucking tree they cut down, it fell on my fucking horse. And the horse died. And I had promised myself I won't do the save scumming thing. I just play this like real life. Whatever happens, happens. And my horse was dying there, you know, crushed by this tree and these fucking lumberjacks.
You're all right, boy.
Bro, those lumberjacks, it was painful, bro. And then I was like, fuck this shit! They killed my fucking horse! So I took my guns and I fucked these people up. And I got fucking chased by the cops or whatever, you know. And I had so much stuff in like the satchel on the horse, you know. And I had like, I had killed a bear, and I really wanted this fur because I wanted to make a cool armor. So I took all this stuff and I like ran. And these fucking cops with their horses, they chased me, and I ran, and I was in this panic and sorrow and tragedy over my horse, dead horse. And I just wanted to survive with my stuff. But that was like an important moment for me, and that's all organic. That's just like a story that happened.
You didn't save. You didn't reload your save, but you didn't have a reviver on you.
What the fuck is a reviver?
A horse reviver.
Reviver.
I didn't know that existed, but seriously, I didn't know.
I'm gonna cry for you. I
was in pain, and I was running, and it was chased, and like all this shit happened after that, and somehow I escaped. I took someone else's horse, and I escaped. You know, I was chased by people, and after that, I was like. And felt empty because my horse had died. She was a beautiful horse. I love that horse. And no other horse in that game ever came to compete with her. I didn't care for the others. I just took courses.
I feel you on that. The scripted part, I want to be careful what I say because I'm sure there's people out there that haven't gotten to the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, but when you're forced to,
oh man,
that was
tears.
I got very teary-eyed, but that's not my answer. I have a different one, but yes, I feel you, Boki. Like that, yeah, that's really, people don't understand how much we love that horse that I can't.
My God.
Matt, did you want to go next? Do you have a favorite moment in a big open world game?
Yeah, I think that I would say I was replaying The Last of Us. I know it's not like an open world game, but I've been replaying The Last of Us, and I was thinking about how the first time you're in that supermarket area in the prologue before all the stuff with Joel when you're with Dina when you're trying to like clear it all out. I did it very differently in my second one, but what sticks with me is my very first time doing it. I was trying to be very stealthy, and I did this awesome thing where I was like, a clicker was coming at me, and it was like wouldn't decide on which side of the aisle I wanted to go on. Like there was an aisle that like abandoned junk, but it was like looked like a supermarket aisle, and it was the new system where like Ellie can like kind of get through tight spaces. So I kept diving through this tight space of like going on the left side of the aisle, going on the right side of the aisle, going on the left side of the aisle. And I probably did that like 4 or 5 times as the clicker finally decided which side I wanted to be on. And I kept like getting like seen a little bit, and I just kept doing it. And I think that was probably one of my favorite moments in that. I think just the stealth and the dynamic stealth in The Last of Us is Last of Us 2. I think that was probably many, many moments like that. And I would say my least favorite moment was all of the times I had to kill a dog. And that was my least favorite moment. And it had the juxtaposition there actually to just touch on. Abby can pet dogs. Ellie has to kill dogs. Something to think about there.
Yeah.
Gurni, what's your favorite open world?
These are all really great. I think Rockstar in general has always been the one that wows me with what you can do. So we've already mentioned Red Dead. There's countless examples. I think you could make an essay of just all the cool moments that happen in that open world. But I'll go with GTA 5 because the first time that I played that game, that was one of the games that just continually blew my mind over and over and over. There's like those random events that happen on the map, and I'll be honest, after a certain point, I kind of like, fuck you, find your own way home or whatever, and I'll keep doing whatever I'm doing. But there was one where there was a guy who got his bike stolen, and you like chase down the perps, and you feel like it's just this regular old mission, but then you get a text message later from this guy that you save his bike and give it back, and he gives you like 100,000 stocks or something in his company. And there's a stock market in GTA. And so like you open the internet and you go to the stock market, and then you can sell all those stocks or keep them and they'll gain money. But like I got like $100,000 from it. And I was like, that was when I was broke in that game. So I just like got all this money and I decked out my car and got some new threads, and just like, it was really cool. All because I saved this dude's bike. Yep. So that was pretty cool.
Spend it at the Vanilla Unicorn.
Yeah.
I have 2 moments, one funny and one emotional. I love GTA 5, by the way. I know that Trevor is a disaster, but I freaking love him.
Yeah.
I'm going to be cautious about spoilers here. There's got to be somebody on the planet who hasn't played Grand Theft Auto 5, maybe. The funniest moment ever in an open world game for me was Mr. Raspberry Jam.
Oh yeah.
Like I can't get over that. I love that That's moment.
There, right?
Yep, and then it ends up on the front grill of his car. Like, just it doesn't matter how many times that I just can't stop laughing, dying over it. Like, it just kills me. Emotional moment I can't use Last of Us 2 because that's not open world. That game messed me up. I know a lot of people are playing Horizon Zero Dawn right now, so I have to be careful what I say, but I think everybody here people who have played it should be able to piece together. Towards the end part of the game, after you've discovered the purpose of Aloy's journey and kind of who she is and why she's there, you have an opportunity on the map to visit a very special place. I'm trying not to say too much. Boki, I can tell you know what I'm talking about.
I actually may have missed this, my first playthrough. Because Breath of the Wild came out right at the end of Horizon Zero Dawn for me.
Are you sure you missed it? It's if you completed the story. Oh, wait, okay. You may have missed it.
I may have missed it.
Completing the story doesn't make you do this. You can visit. There are graves that you can visit in the game. There's more than one that you can visit.
Oh.
So there's a very emotional one that I think a lot of people missed, but it's directly connected to who Aloy is and the purpose of her journey. And for me, that was extremely emotional, and it comes with kind of a way, you know how we were talking earlier about how you can see things that were in the past? There's a moment that happens there, and it's very, for me, it was very, because I was emotionally invested in the story and in who Aloy was, but that would be a big spoiler for me to say anything more than this. So that was like, oh wow, that was a really, really emotional part of it, and you can miss it. You can go entirely through that game and miss one of the most beautiful moments in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Boki, you know what I'm talking about, Boki, if you can explain it better than me.
It's good. I understand you. I think the people that are listening will understand.
Okay. After we record offline, Gurni, I'll tell you what it is if you want to know, because it's really... So anything else that you guys want to close with before we wrap up?
I think we've done a good job of getting all of our thoughts out. I think that I gave my true favorite moment in an open world game with that Witcher 3 example that I gave when I was in that cellar. They're like very very dynamic moment. And thank you for letting me cheat with The Last of Us. Maybe I'll throw out an actual open world one. I think I'd have to go Skyrim. Just the fact that I always become a sneaky archer, no matter what I start that game as. I always end up with the sneaky archer. And I would say I am a sucker for bow and arrows in games. So the very first time I was able to one shot a giant in Skyrim was huge for me. So I'd say that.
That's a great one. Well, as always. Oh, sorry. Did you have one more thing, Gurni?
Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. Well, thanks for watching. This was episode 8 of the Game Junkie Show. So we're chugging along. So as always, thanks for watching and listening. And thank you to my amazing guests and some of my closest and most amazing game friends for joining me on yet another journey. Bye, everybody.